Excited to be here with you for this live stream event. As usual, I'm going to do a content drop, and at the end, I will take some time aside to answer questions. So as you are watching and listening, feel free to type your questions in the chat as we go along, and I'm going to create an opportunity at the end to answer as many as I can. So welcome. I am excited today to dive into the topic of 6 effective communication tips with anxious partners. And so let me guess. You want to know how to effectively communicate with your anxious partner. Bonus points if you could also find a way to build a respectful and appreciative sense of companionship that allows you to experience a sense of freedom and personal autonomy while in relationship. But maybe it hasn't happened yet. Maybe no matter how hard you try, nothing seems to pan out the way that you want it to, or they wind up taking things too personally and it explodes in your face. Maybe they feel abandoned by your need for alone time, or they take their frustrations out on you, expecting you to do things or say things that make them happy, and you're just convinced that you're going to fail before you've begun. Now, if this sounds like you, you're going to love this video segment because I am going to share with you the 6 effective communication tips with our anxious partners. And this is going to help you get better results fast without having to emotionally distance yourself or prematurely end a relationship because you're worried these conflicts are unresolvable. And so I assure you, with a little bit of effort and compassion, you can effectively communicate with your anxious partner, and you can learn to strengthen the relationship. So in this video, we are going to explore those 6 tips to help you do this. So by the end, you will have a better understanding of how anxious attachment style looks and how that impacts the communication in your relationships. You will also learn practical tips to communicate effectively with your anxious partner, and you can start using these right away. You'll also be equipped with tools and strategies for building that more secure and satisfying relationship that allows you to have a sense of personal autonomy. And you'll feel more confident in your ability to navigate difficult conversations while connecting to your partner on a deeper level. Now, I also invite you, if you find this content interesting, to take the communication quiz in the caption of this video. This is going to help you maximize your results if you decide to put these tips into action. Now, before we get started, if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is brianamacwilliam, and I'm a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field helping adults struggling with insecure attachment attract and or cultivate those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this through an attachment and trauma-informed approach to healing attachment styles in creative arts therapies. My approach is also somatic as well as spiritually informed. Now, if you like what you see and hear, be sure that you like, subscribe, and follow along for more. I like to put out more video topics like this as well as live Q&As, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. So let's just dive right into our topic for today. And first, I'd like to discuss a bit about why is it so difficult to communicate with our anxious partners sometimes. So communication is an essential aspect of any healthy relationship, but sometimes it can be challenging if your partner is particularly anxious. Okay, so an anxious attachment style is really characterized by a fear of abandonment and a persistent need for reassurance from their partner. Because of this, maybe you miss a text or you respond to a call late, and they might have already jumped to an extreme and negative conclusion in their head, and you find yourself having to do damage control. Or maybe they suppress their needs and pretend that things are okay when they aren't because they want to please you and keep you around in order to avoid a conflict. But as a result, their resentments may start to build and they wind up getting angry over seemingly small or insignificant things. And that leaves you feeling confused and left in the dark. But it's important to realize that this is usually about displaced, repressed feelings or needs that they've been too afraid to express. And that can result in things like miscommunications, misunderstandings, and hurt feelings on both sides. It can also leave you feeling frustrated and as if your partner doesn't trust you with their deeper needs and feelings, and that can create emotional distance between you as well. Now, Because of painful past experiences, anxious partners are also typically afraid of the unknown, and they need to know the outcome of things, particularly relationships, where it's headed pretty early on. And so this can lead to putting a lot of pressure on the relationship. It can also stimulate feelings of suspicion or intense jealousy when a partner's attentions are divided. So, it's also important to realize, however, that a need for control is often a need for connection. And if we can keep this tender notion in mind, then it can make it easier for us to show up with a spirit of generosity and curiosity in the relationship when our anxious partners are expressing their insecurities from a fearful place. Now, anxious partners also have tremendous strengths, and I think it's worthwhile to mention a few of those here. So, for example, our anxious partners have emotional sensitivity, right? They're often highly attuned to their own emotions and the emotions of others. And so, this can be a strength in a relationship in offering care and reciprocating efforts in the relationship. They may also be very empathetic and able to provide support for their partners. They are usually pretty loyal. Anxiously attached partners can be very committed to their relationships. They often prioritize their relationships and may work hard to maintain them. And that's a valuable trait when it comes to a long term partnership and commitment. They also are interested in improving their communication skills. So, anxious partners often have a strong desire to communicate and connect with their partner. And so that leads them to finding the resources for developing strong communication skills and also to express their emotions and their needs effectively. They're also very intuitive. So anxious partners, they can be very intuitive and sensitive to the subtle changes in your behavior and in your mood states. And that can help them identify potential problems in a relationship and work on them and addressing them before they blow up and become major problems. Okay? And of course, our anxious open hearts are usually very compassionate. They often are caring individuals and can be highly motivated to help other people and support them as well. And that fosters a strong sense of mutual care and support. It also creates a wonderful community and network that you get to be a part of, right? So, if you are interested in learning more about the 6 signs of an anxious partner and how we can learn to embrace it, I encourage you to check out my video on this topic. You're going to learn a lot more about your anxious partner and how to approach them in a loving way. Okay, so let's dive into our 6 tips for effective communication with an anxious partner. So, tip number 1, validate their feelings. Okay. So anxious partners often experience intense emotions, and it's essential to validate their feelings instead of dismissing or minimizing them. So when your partner expresses their fears or concerns, acknowledge them, let them know that their feelings are valid, even if you don't understand why they're feeling that way, it's still valid, and let them know that. And do that without taking on their insecurities for yourself. Okay, so for example, if your partner says, I'm worried that you don't love me anymore, you can respond with, Ooh, I'm sorry you feel that way. I understand that you're feeling insecure, but I love you very much. Please tell me how I can help you to feel reassured in this moment. They're basically extending an invitation for you to participate in and contribute to their emotional experience. And that is some of the juiciness of being in a relationship, right? That's part of what helps us to feel more connected, vulnerable, and intimate. Now, the second tip is to practice active listening. And this is a tip that I recommend for anxious partners as well as fearful avoidant partners and even our secure partners. So, anxious partners, they often have a lot to say, and it's important to actively listen to what they have to say, noticing the subtext. Okay. So, practicing active listening means attending to their words, but more specifically, attending to the emotional, energetic expression that goes along with the content of their words. And if you're not sure where that is, you might ask clarifying questions and repeat back to them what they've said so that you can be sure that you've understood them correctly. So, for example, if your partner says, I'm feeling anxious about our relationship, you might respond with, I hear that you're feeling anxious. Can you tell me more about what's making you feel that way? Right? Express some curiosity there. Now, the next tip, tip number 3, this one is to avoid triggering language. Now, anxious partners can be easily triggered by certain words or phrases that can activate a fear of abandonment or rejection. So avoid using language like, we need to talk or I need some space, because it's often ominous and it's also very vague and there's no clear lines around it. You also want to avoid being dismissive, minimizing, or invalidating, right? You don't want to say things like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or you're worried about nothing, right? Instead, you want to use language that is clear, that is containing, and that is non-threatening. So, for example, you might, instead of saying we need to talk, you might say, um, I'd love to know what's on your mind. Can we make some time and space for that? If you need to take space, you might say something like, ooh, I'm feeling overwhelmed about work, right? Make sure that you're being very clear about what you're overwhelmed by. Or I just need to clear my head and de stress for a bit. I'm going to go do XYZ and I'll reach out again at a specific date and time, right? Instead of just dismissing their feelings, right? Because when you create clear lines and containers around the space that you're taking, it's much easier for the open hearted partner to give that to you. And they usually want to. Okay. And tip number 4, provide reassurance. Okay. So anxious partners need a lot of reassurance from their partners, and it's important to provide that whenever possible. So let your partner know that you love and care for them, that you are committed to the relationship. And so, for example, maybe your partner says something like, I'm worried that you're going to leave me. And so you might respond with, I'm committed to our relationship and I'm not going anywhere. Um, Maybe you can tell me more about why you're worried and what you might be needing in this moment, and I'll see if I can help with that. You might also offer reassurance proactively. Just ask your partner proactively what is reassuring to them and then do it without them needing to ask. And if you can do this, oh, amazing brownie points for you. It is greatly going to reduce the conflicts in your relationship, and their love for you is going to deepen significantly. And we have setting boundaries. Tip number 5 is setting boundaries. So while it's essential to provide reassurance to your anxious partner, it's also important to set boundaries. So let your partner know when what you are comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. So for example, if your partner wants constant contact throughout the day, but you need to focus on work, you can just say, I care about you, I love you, but I do need some time to focus on my work right now. Let's catch up later tonight. And then give them a specific date and time when you're going to reach out to them. Okay. Be proactive again with your reassurance. Being proactive with reassurance, I just want to emphasize this is a way of supporting and honoring your own boundaries as well, because it's going to allow your partner to be more relaxed, trusting, and flexible when you need to assert your personal autonomy. Okay. So, with that, I want to just take a little pause and ask if you've tried any of these tips before, and if so, how did it go? Or if you are the anxious partner, how would you respond to this approach? Right? I'd love to know your experience in the comments there. And I've got my little comment icon there. And so let's move on to our 6th tip. So our 6th tip is simply to be generous of spirit. And what does that mean? Well, anxious attachment can cause individuals to feel insecure, jealous, or needing reassurance a lot of the time. And as a result, communicating with a partner can require more patience and understanding. And so it's important to acknowledge that their feelings are valid, even if they may not always make rational or logical sense to you. And so by being patient and accepting during those moments, we can de-escalate a situation and allow your partner to feel more safe, to feel heard, seen, and supported. And that requires a generosity of spirit. So, for example, if they say something like, I can't believe that you're going out with your friends again. You always choose them over me. You might say something like, I understand that you're feeling anxious about me spending time with my friends, but those connections allow me to show up as my best self to this relationship. I do care about you and I value our time together. I promise I'm going to check in later and let's make a plan for just the two of us, right? So, being generous of spirit can sometimes be difficult for avoidant partners for several reasons. So, for fearful avoidant partners, it's often because they usually have had difficult experiences where their generosity was taken advantage of or it was deemed to never be enough. And so they were left feeling depleted, degraded, ignored, neglected, like a failure, or otherwise unacknowledged and disempowered. And so they have been given too much emotional power over their caregivers as children. And so that leaves very little room for their own autonomous self. And so in adulthood, it creates a threat response in romantic situations when their partners appear to be somewhat emotional needy. Now, for dismissive avoidant partners, it's sometimes because they were never taught how to fully recognize, honor, and articulate their emotional states. And so they feel unable to navigate the gray areas in relationships, feeling confused and threatened by the nuances of emotional boundaries and their partner's emotions. But there is a natural give and take that occurs in relationships, which balances out with some patience over time. Now, part of the benefit of being in relationship is that you each get to learn how to contribute to each other's well-being and happiness by being willing and wanting to participate in it. And with a comprehensive understanding of personal boundaries, you can do this without assuming full responsibility for your partner's well-being. Now, if you're interested in learning more about that, I do have another video on my YouTube channel. It's called Healthy versus Unhealthy Boundaries and How to Tell the Difference. And I think that this would definitely help you with cultivating a spirit of generosity in the relationship. Okay, so now I'd just like to hop on over to our final thoughts for today. Now, in conclusion, communicating with anxiously attached partners, it can be challenging, but there are ways to make it more effective. So by validating their feelings, practicing active listening, avoiding triggering language, providing reassurance, setting good boundaries, and being generous of spirit, you can build more secure and trusting relationships in which you get to feel like you get to keep your autonomous self. Now, while anxiety may not necessarily be a choice, but how we respond to it is. And so by implementing these tips, you can help your partner to feel heard, supported, and loved. And that's going to encourage the strengths of the anxious partner to just blossom in your relationship. And remember, those include sensitivity, loyalty, intuitiveness, compassion, and care. And so for our anxious individuals, know that your feelings are valid, and with practice, we can learn to communicate our fears in a way that is safe and productive as well. Now, to learn more about communicating with your avoidant partner, we already did a video segment on this, so you can catch that on my YouTube channel. Again, we go over 6 effective tips for communicating with avoidant partners. And I would have you just remember that communication is often key, but it takes time, it takes patience and effort to build those strong and healthy relationships with positive communication skills, right? So be kind to yourself, to your partner. Don't hesitate to seek assistance if you need it, because with the right tools and support, we can cultivate those more fulfilling relationships for both of you. Now, I hope that this has been helpful and that you might be able to incorporate some of these tips into your experience. If you like today's content, I would love it if you'd leave a comment expressing some of your experiences as well as any questions. I like to take all comments and feedback into consideration when developing future video topics like this. And I also invite you to stay tuned for our Fearful Avoidant Partners because next week we are going to come back with 6 effective communication tips for our fearful avoidant partners. And so, with that, if you are interested in support with implementing these communication tips that I'm sharing with you, I do invite you to take the communication quiz in the caption of this video, and it's going to help you find out how attachment styles may be affecting the communication in your relationships. And so, with that, I want to say thank you for joining me here today, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. For those of you that are able to stick with me, I'm going to hop on over to our chat box and see if there are any questions that I can answer in the time that we have left together. Let's see. I decided not to talk anymore to my husband 37 years anymore. He's always somewhere else and never remembers things that I have told him. That sounds like a frustrating experience. Thank you for sharing that with us. I do not want to try anymore. I've been feeling distance from him since we got married. Okay. So when we're in long-term situation, it's helpful to seek assistance, but also to ask yourself if you even want to be in it anymore, right? And why would you want to be in it? A lot of this is asking yourself, am I in it because of my attachment anxiety? Am I in it because I'm still seeking the connection that I feel like I haven't gotten yet? So there's a lot of maybe stepping outside of the content of the current situation and starting to build a construct for what you want from relationship in general. And I actually recommend people who are in long-term relationships to do this just as much as I recommend people who are single or dating to do this. Even if you're in a long-term relationship, you should still continue to be checking in with yourself and asking, what do I want from relationship in general, detached from my attachment to this specific person, this specific relationship, because that's going to put you in conversation with your spirit, with your higher knowing, with the essence of your vibrational being. And what it does is it calls into your experience, either your existing partner can be called to meet you there, or they increasingly become a mismatch for what it is that you want. And now you have some decisions to make. And it's not just a matter of stay or go. It can be a matter of just revising the contract that exists between you. So in long-term marriages, I've seen people explore a variety of options, including sometimes opening the marriage, right? So there are ways to go about it that are not an either or scenario. And this is why we talk about in the last video, when we're talking about working with avoidant partners, that radical acceptance, it's not just about letting them off the hook, right? Radical acceptance is not just letting someone off the hook. Radical acceptance is letting you off the hook, right? It's creating opportunities for you to get what you need. It's creating opportunities for you to accurately assess, evaluate, go out and find what it is that you really need, and to create to explore the gray areas of life where you can explore that more in depth. Because anything that you want because you think you will feel a certain way in the having of that thing, whether it's a material thing or a relational thing, anything you want because you think you will feel better when you have that thing. And a feeling is energy moving through your body. And so if we can extract our attachments, biological attachments, psychological attachments, to the idea that it has to be that the only way I can experience that nuanced form of energy is in the presence of a thing, right? Then we're going to become narrowly focused, and it's going to be super hard to attract that into our lives proactively. Instead, you want to kind of dissect what is the essence of that feeling I'm trying to experience, and what is the quality of that energy inside my body. And if I asked you to close your eyes and to summon up what you think that would look like, what you think that would feel like, all of a sudden you're actually vibing on that level. And now we are able to detach our attachments to the ideas of how it must be delivered, whether it's through our long-term partner, through the acquisition of material things, so on and so forth, right? So I would say it sounds like, based on this particular statement, I do not want to try anymore. I've had distance from him since we were married in 37 years. So I suspect the first step for you is actually going to be recovering yourself. Because if you've allowed this to go on for 37 years and you've been putting up with it for 37 years, there's some repair work that you're going to have to do with yourself first, right? And once you recover that part of yourself, wild horses won't be able to stop you from doing what you know you must do to continue honoring yourself, right? And not accepting distance in that way anymore. Maybe the best time to have done this was, I don't know, 36 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, last year. But you know when the second best time to start doing that is? Right now. And so that's where I would start. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I just want to send you big hugs and well wishes on your journey with this. It sounds like you are on the cusp of something. I get too anxious to talk to my old friend. I believe I'm fearful avoidant. I want to do something about that so I can express myself normally. Well, I hope that you find the tips in this particular video helpful. Next week, we are going to be doing a video for folks that have fearful avoidance. And I might argue that these videos are helpful for folks that have fearful avoidance, as well as for partners that may be wanting to communicate with their fearful avoidant significant others. So I encourage you to stay tuned, and you might also check out the other video that we did on 6 effective communication tips with avoidant partners. We also are going to do 6 effective communication tips with secure partners. We're going to run the whole gamut. So I encourage you to stay tuned. Also, I do have a playlist on my YouTube channel called Communication, and we talk about a variety of topics related to this. So I hope that helps. How do you find the courage to walk away once you have enlightened yourself that your partner is avoidant, is incapable of changing, and that it's not enough for you? How do you find the courage? So for me, courage is about, we feel compelled to change when the desire for change is stronger than the fear of letting go of the familiar, right? And what is the fear of letting go of the familiar? It's attachment anxiety. So the question really is, so courage comes from healing attachment anxiety. So that's in my programs. I usually approach that, depending on which program you're participating in, I approach that in a threefold process. I'm going to reference my Hungry Love program because that's typically for folks that are working on their own internal journey. And if you're trying to summon courage and you already know it's not enough for you, then this is an internal journey that you're on right now, right? So in my Hungry Love program, it's 4 steps. First, we clarify desire. So we look at what you're wanting now and we suss out, is it born of attachment anxiety, meaning a fear-based want, or is it born of spirit, meaning it's expansive, it's curious, it's growth-oriented, as opposed to being urgent, seeking relief, or seeking avoidance to find relief, right? So there's a difference there. So we take a look at clarifying your desire. Then we move into looking at, once you finally articulate the spirit-based desire that exists there, and even fearful beliefs and desires are going to point us towards the spirit-based desire, right? So fear is always useful. Once we've articulated that, usually what happens is there will be this uproar in our unconscious mind, in our emotional body, and that uproar becomes a lot of noise that says why you can or cannot have it, why you should or shouldn't stay, so on and so forth. All these parts and beliefs get kicked up. And so now we are being presented with a gift, which is, oh, you want to expand into something bigger and greater for yourself? Great. Here are the dusty corners that you have to sweep out first in order to create space and allow that massive energetic flow that you are calling in, right? So this is where we start working with processing the energy, and embodied practices are really going to help you do this. This is the learning to regulate the nervous system and mitigate that sense of threat you feel when an attachment an anxiously attached thought or belief system or habitual way of thinking and perceiving things gets turned on. And again, I mentioned this in the last video, but basically, nervous system regulation is not suppression. It's not calming things down. It's not unilaterally adopting it's kind of a toxic positive attitude. It's learning to be a rubber band, learning how to expand and soften and be flexible and open up and allow for the difficult feelings and the pain and the fear and the grief and the loss that comes through, because that's a natural part of human existence and experience, right? We're here to experience a wide range of human emotions so that we can feel our way through life rather than try to think our way around it, right? So we start working with the nervous system and embodied practices for opening that up and expanding it. Often in my work, we use parts work and integration to play with this as well, with things like breath work, somatic experiencing. We also do structural integration, which is sometimes called Rolfing, my own creative arts practices, guided visualizations, things like that, to start working with the body in a very direct way. Then the third step is now that we've looked at what we want, we've cleared some limiting beliefs, we've addressed the energy that comes up around it and opened up and relaxed and softened some of those constrictions on the body level. Now we're going to look at creating new thoughts, new beliefs, new systems of habitual systems of thought that are going to create opportunities for you, right? In many ways, this is changing your identity. In many ways, it's adopting a whole new identity, the identity of the person who's not afraid of letting go of something to pursue what you really want, who's not afraid to say, I love you, I accept you as you are, and I also know it's not enough for me, right? And who's not afraid to allow that to be what it is, to know that that's both a loss and a win and a gift, right? It can be both things, and to not allow it to stop you to keep going and following your heart and moving into alignment with what you know now is for you, right? So who's that person? What's that identity? So we start constructing that. In my work, we use things like focus wheels, we play with energetic set points, so on and so forth. And then lastly is installment. So these limiting beliefs were installed through years of habitual reinforcement and embodied fearful responses, constrictions. So we install the same way, right? So we will install by opening up the body, by moving through the energetic states that we want to experience, by conjuring and summoning them, right? So imagine who is the me that's already left and that's pursuing what I know is what I need. Who's that person? How do they walk? How do they sound? When they're feeling light and airy and moving throughout their day, what does that look like, sound like, feel like in their body, right? Enact that. This is manifestation. So we gain the courage by confronting our fears, learning to expand, to hold those fears, listening to them, letting them tell us what corners we need to sweep out, and then allowing them to inform our vision for what we want moving forward, and then embodying that in a very visceral way. So I hope that helps. So my problem is I constantly feel like I've embarrassed myself, makes the situation awkward. Not only that, I notice I act the same way with others. So I would say talk to embarrassment, right? So sometimes it's not even what we say, it's how we say it. And if you're feeling embarrassed, then what you're communicating on an energetic level is some degree of shame. Second part of this question, as if I'm continuing the pain initiating from her, and I feel like I keep embarrassing myself more with other people. So this is a boundary question, right? Is this my embarrassment or is this their shame? And why would their shame induce my embarrassment, right? Why am I feeling embarrassed in this moment? Really, it sounds like you might be taking on some energy. And if it is stimulating embarrassment for you, it might also be worthwhile going in and talking to and being in conversation with, what is that embarrassment about? Why is the other person's issues stimulating that for you? And why is it conjuring stories about how you're not showing up the way that you want to in conversations with this person or even other people? Um, to help you with this, I recommend checking out on my YouTube channel. It'll be on the front facing page when you land on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist called Healing the Wounded Inner Child. And we just did this series last month where I walk you through an experiential process of connecting to, working with through creative arts intervention, speaking to the parts that may be coming up and causing you some trouble when you're in situations like this. So I recommend checking out that playlist and maybe calling into with intention that experience of this feeling of embarrassment, and where's that coming from? How much of this belongs to me, and how much of this am I actually responding to and picking up from other people? And how much of this doesn't actually belong to me? So I recommend checking out that video series because it's going to walk you step by step through some experiential exercises that will help you engage with that more practically and effectively speaking. So I hope that helps. Thank you to all of you who joined me here for the live stream. I really appreciate your engagement. And we will be back next week with our discussing these effective communication tips for fearful avoidant folks, as well as for our secure partners. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you have